Despite having an underwhelming record at Rutgers this year, Dylan Harper maintained his status as one of the premier prospects in the class and had some of the most impressive performances in college basketball. As a big guard listed at 6'6", 220, he put up an efficient 19, 5, and 4, taking on a huge creation responsibility for his team. He was tremendous as a rim pressure threat, and that matched with his ability to make plays for others and the upside he has in some supporting areas make him a fairly easy sell at the top of the draft. Now, there's still valid concerns in his perimeter game and his shot that'll determine a lot for him as a creator at the next level, and whether he can become that primary or will have to shift his game a bit. But he's one of the class's best playmakers and a likely top 3 pick. Now, Dylan was an immediate force at creating advantages, getting downhill, and converting at a high clip when he got there. And as we mentioned, he put together one of the most effective freshman seasons as a driver that we've seen. He shot nearly 68% of the bucket, including 65% in the half court. He got there about 8 times a game, which is a ridiculous mark for anyone, but considering he was the #1 guy on the scouting report on a poorly spaced floor and over 80% of his makes were unassisted, it's hard not to be impressed by what he did. He has a solid first step, but where he excels is in his pace, playing slow to fast, and being physical to carve out driving lanes and good angles to finish. He has a sharp jab game and solid handle. He can go either direction, and he's instinctive with his counters, whether that's a spin or behind the back. And he also has solid feel for where the help is coming from.
Crazy. How cool is that? Dylan Harper on the drive. Jeremiah Williams on that possession. Never let Garcia get the ball. Harper crosses over. Yes! Harper drives. Harper knifing to the basket. Score on the floor. See if they can open up the floor. Wow, look at this. Harper. Dylan Harper's extraordinary. Harper one-on-one against Thomas. Gets to the glass. Dylan Harper puts it on the deck. Harper just finds a way. Harper. It's by Imes. Harper in traffic around 3 Irish players. Williams. Good recovery here against Harper with a spin. Dylan Harper. Come back to Harper. Off to a slow start, just 1 out of 4 and a couple of turnovers. Spins in tight. Happen. We'll try again on Sunday against Ohio State. Here's Harper. And 88 paint points to Purdue. 38 to Wisconsin. Need to cut down on that. Here's Harper on the drive. Game of the season. Dylan Harper.
His craft around the rim is actually one of my favorite parts of his game, where he's frequently shown off step throughs, reverse pivots into finishes with either hand, and overall comfort playing off a 2. And then you throw in the Euros and touch playing at full speed and against contact, and that's a combination that's going to lead to success on most levels. Now, he's not an elite vertical athlete. He can definitely continue to sharpen the handle to compensate for some of that, but the size, craft, and production in a competitive Big Ten is more than enough to be comfortable in this being a big part of who he is.
Moves it to Harper. Harper with his right hand. And now spins and scores. You draw somebody. Great pass. And now Harper picking on eyes. Harper gets right by him. Scores. First half has not scored here in the second half, and Harper's off to the races. Changes hands. Can't take so that. There's Durkak again. Forces another Notre Dame turnover. Harper driving. Harper with the 2 fouls. 2 seconds, nowhere near. Rebound ripped out. Harper in a hurry and gets all the way home.
Now, Harper also has a ton of upside as a pick and roll scorer. He averaged just under a point per possession as a mostly downhill threat, and if he can get just a bit of daylight going either direction off that screen, he's got a great chance of converting and making something positive happen in the process. I was really impressed with how he worked through aggressive coverages and still found a way to produce and never had a high number of silent games, even with teams doing whatever they could to try to limit him. He's as good on splits as any guard that I've watched the last several years. He's got great timing there and does a good job of setting up those angles to then go finish it off and read that back line of the defense. He also showed flashes of being able to score it from deep here and punish it under, but this is the part that'll dictate a lot for him and just how good he can become as a pick and roll threat, and more importantly, as an overall scorer. But the downhill ability, the pace and craft in ball screen situations, and at least some recognition as a pull-up guy at 6'6" is a big part of what makes him one of the very best creation bets in the class.
Struggles with his health. He's still top 10 in the conference in assists. Harper swinging the defense. Stands for a while here. Down to 5 on the clock for Harper. He hoists the three. He hit it in front of these defenders at your own risk here. Harper got it. That was a three.
Now, shooting is still a real work in progress for Harper, and it's definitely not a true strength, but he's been a capable catch and shoot threat, and I think he has a bit more overall off-ball upside than has been discussed. He ended up right at 37% on catch and shoot threes. He shot 35% in the EYBL in 2023, and generally he's more composed and measured off the catch than he is off the dribble. He had a ton of responsibility this year, and that can sometimes be difficult to see past in terms of role projection, but I think the pathway to him being a more useful threat off the ball is there. He was solid attacking closeouts, he had success on the limited cutting opportunities, and the finishing is obviously a plus, so he'll need to be more consistent as a shooter first and foremost, but I personally wouldn't say he's as tied to the usage he had this year to be effective.
With the screen, Davis. Harper with a seam into the lane, and I don't know if I've called a game jam, or I can say a team has made 17 of the last 19.
The other part of what makes Dillon such a compelling prospect is his passing and ability to make plays for his teammates in a significant way. He averaged about 4 assists a game, the assist percentage was right at 27, and he was a consistent force in making plays through drawing the defense and reacting to how they committed and helped. He does a great job of making wraparounds and manipulating that last defender to open up a play inside, and that combined with the handle in traffic made him a huge threat there. He can also make passes with either hand and has a good grasp of his reads within the pick and roll. He's capable of making the mundane play after seeing two to the ball, which happened fairly often, or when it was there, he could give you the skip to the corner or a kick out on the perimeter. Now, he can still improve his passing accuracy and make his decisions a bit sharper. He had moments where he took an extra dribble or beat before letting it go and could force the issue at times, some of which you live with, but that's the next step for him here. But even with that said, he's one of the top playmakers in the class because of the attention that he can draw and his ability to find guys consistently without turning it over.
College basketball. He's going to get after Harper, Obole, and that's his road
At Maryland on Wednesday. Into the post to begin. A foul.
catch his second win because he's going to need it with this guy guarding.
Somerville in the lane by himself.
Unfortunately, so is that stomach bug that all the Huskies have had. Durkak hits the three.
He started last season so poorly in terms of three-point shooting. That's not the case now.
Well, he had those 31 points off the bench, too, for Illinois. Davis trying to answer.
In this game, Rutgers' 2-point defense hasn't been great. Here's the first play. What a shot by Bailey.
The spot that's most important for Harper maximizing as an NBA creator is his ability to convert as a pull-up shooter and have a legitimate counter for his downhill game. Now, he's actually capable of getting to pull-ups all over the floor and took about 5 a game, but he just hasn't been effective in a way that would keep him from having defenses first strongly playing his drive and then in the pick and roll sticking to drop, ice or downing sideball screens, and potentially going under. He shot under 30% off the bounce overall and about 28% in the mid-range. He's got a pretty low set and release point that's led to a flat trajectory a lot of times and made him susceptible to contests. Whenever he's been off balance, the results could get pretty wild too, and I think a lot of this would be my main point of emphasis heading into the league.
Harper against Hefner. Turns down that side ball screen. Difficult. Off front eye. Loose ball.
Inside of 1 minute now. Harper, pull up. Scarlet Knights now find the shoot. Harper, deep three.
Now, I do want to be clear, he has positives to lean into. Again, he shot over 150 shots off the bounce, which is way more than half the battle. The footwork and pickups going into shots is solid. He has the makings of a good misdirection and step back game too. So yeah, there are some inconsistencies and undisciplined reps, but for an 18-year-old guard, there's a good base there, and we've seen plenty of prior examples of process over production when it comes to college self-creation because most guys just aren't particularly efficient, and if they are, it is often lower volume. But this is likely going to be what determines if he can get to that true star level of impact or becomes more of a secondary type, especially because most of the other guys who had similar shot profiles in college were some of the best NBA athletes in the game at the time.
Harper does not have numbers. He has that three. For sure. Harper, pull up three. Harper looking like he wants that shot.
Takes it. Top scoring freshman in the nation, averaging 23 points per game.
And you see how Penn State's going to guard him.
Sitting on those 2 points he had at halftime. He steps into a three and connects.
There's Aco inbound. Gets it to Harper. 9 on the shot clock as we approach 5.5 to go.
Ace Bailey back in the game with that game-high 15 points. Also has 3 fouls. Dylan Harper.
These teams, they do not want to be left out of the Big Ten tournament. Bottom 3 don't make it. Pull up under duress. Oh my!
A lot of the same can be said for him as a shooter off the catch. We mentioned some of it earlier. He's got okay splits from 3. He ended up better from the free throw line from a slow start, but it is something that'll determine a lot of his success and positively give him a nearly foolproof path to being a high-level contributor. Now you look at the difference between his guarded and unguarded attempts, and it does make sense as a trend given the release point that we talked about. It's not impossible to still make do, but you kind of need Brandon Miller range to help that. But overall, if he's below average, it'll certainly change how effective he can be, but as long as he's in that league average realm and respected, it's hard to believe he wouldn't be one of the best players in the class. And the last thing I'll add offensively, he actually did an excellent job of taking care of the ball. The turnover rate was under 15 at a 29% usage. He had just about 2.5 a game total, so it wasn't a big picture issue at all, but there were times he could get ahead of himself and waver in terms of ball control, and then the decision making can be sharper as a passer. A situation can affect your mentality there quite a bit, but there were some misreads in favor of a shot for himself, and growth there is always welcomed as a creator. Now defensively, I actually think Dylan projects fairly well. It was a bit of a mixed bag this year, but I lean positive long term, so we'll start there. He has good positional size and lateral ability at the point of attack. He's not elite and probably won't turn into his dad on this end, but he can contain. I think he'll have the ability to match up with 2 or maybe 3 positions depending on how things go, and when he was tested or put on one-on-one situations, it usually went well. So he's matchup versatile, he can avoid being picked on for his size and provides some resistance at the point of attack, and for all that, I'd anticipate he'll at worst be neutral, if not much better, unless he's just overtaxed offensively.
Challenge him. Get it to Yates with 6. Yates trying to find an opening, get off his shot, try to dish it off.
Second half, and expect to see him down there quite often.
Thornton bumping with Harper.
Now this was one of those situations where he had to carry a ton for the offense, which led to some fluctuating effort and some inconsistency. One in just staying attached, navigating screens, and staying in possessions. You also might have caught him lax off the ball, and he's also never been a super active guy in passing lanes or getting deflections, so there was a handful of avoidable mistakes. Now he did get better as a defensive playmaker as time went on. He ended up with a steal and block rate of both, nearly over 2, and also had 22 of his 42 total steals in the last 10 games. And I think his positioning is fine and help even if he doesn't have the best anticipation or playmaking instincts. It just probably won't be a strength of his or where he makes his presence felt most. So there's a good amount for him to still clean up for him to be a lot better on this end, and I think what team he ends up on is going to have a lot to do with which version we see. But again, I bet on the tools keeping him a net positive on this end as he settles into his career.
There to pick it off. Shot clock off now, but Rutgers working fast.
A great game at East Lansing a few nights ago. Also had 20 points, 9 rebounds. Steal. Harper. First 2 slam through.
Not overcommitting. Harper to steal. Open floor to the rim. Lays it up.
Harris, his first touch of the ballgame. Nice, he does that so well. And the steal from Harper off the shot fake. Get the foot race, step through.
It was back in the hands of Parks. So Ohio State settles in, but Harper reaches
7 cows. Battle for it.
Now Harper will be the number 2 on my board, and I'd anticipate he'll be the second pick, but top 3 is probably his floor. Offensively, he has as much primary upside as anyone not named Cooper Flagg, but it's more realistic that he's a secondary guy in a winning situation, which you can still be an excellent player in. Defensively, he's exactly what you want physically in the league right now. He can guard a couple positions, he's a decent mover. He'll just need to be more bought in. Now how he evolves as a pull-up shooter and shooter in general will have a big say in whether he can reach that all-star type of upside. And then on the lower end, starter or overqualified 6-man is where I could see it going. And as always, these are fluid. Now his fit is kind of difficult to limit because he'll be best player available and have freedom with a lot of teams, but I like Washington as a much needed playmaker. Toronto could use his rim pressure and he'd have a lot of talent around him. Obviously, you've got teams like Utah and Brooklyn. Charlotte could be an interesting mix if they shifted responsibilities. And then for a lower odds team, I could see Miami being a spot that he exceeds expectations. In comparison wise, there isn't one that makes a ton of sense. I do think the way that Cade controls games as a big dribble pass shoot threat is there, but Dillon is way different as a driver and a little smaller. He is obviously much bigger than Jalen Brunson, but their offensive games could be pretty similar in that respect. And then someone I haven't seen mentioned is J-Dub. The all defense leap can't be expected, but that's a well-rounded secondary. I could definitely see that one. And then there's always a chance to be in that group of talented but flawed creators like an RJ Barrett down to a Tyreke Evans. There isn't anybody in the class that fully matches Dylan Harper's size, rim pressure, and playmaking, and that combined with his upside as a perimeter scorer make him a really intriguing prospect at the top of the draft. Now there are spots that he'll need to improve to be a full-on primary creator, but he's what I think should be valued at the top of drafts, and he also has the production to back it.